This video is going to be part of the new Focusing Oriented Therapies channel, and we're going to have it in a series called Recent Dialogues about FOT. So I'm so pleased, Steve, that you're with me this morning, and we're going to talk about what's essential about focusing, how it orients us, what's precious. And then we'll talk later about what you bring to it, what you cross it with, and how you use it in therapy. So I want to introduce you. Steve Moscovitch is a long-term focusing-oriented therapist in private practice, and has been working on many projects, including the Community Empowerment Project and now this new YouTube channel project, and
the Therapist Circle.
Oh, and the Therapist Circle for the Focusing Institute. Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Anything else I'm leaving out?
Well, the Millennial Group, but that may, that's with you,
Intergenerational Wisdom Emergence Group. It called it. Yes, absolutely. And your expansion of FOT is crossing it with an understanding of values from the perspective of Jenlin's philosophy and also the Jewish tradition of Musar. Did I say that right? Is that right? Good. But right now we're going to talk about what's most essential about FOT. What makes you a focusing-oriented therapist, and how does focus place you, and ground you, inspire you, direct you in some kind of way, guide you? I want to also say, I'm so sorry you didn't even get a word in there twice.
Keep going. Well, I'm going inside.
I was say, as a way of introducing you, that you have just a wonderful way of taking very, very complex concepts and deep understandings of things and putting them in this pithy kind of schema, and so you're going to talk about the B's today as a way of talking about what's precious about FOT. But you have wonderful terms, wonderful images, and wonderful little models that I love. I find very helpful.
Well, thank you. And it's when you talk about, sort of what is the essence, and what is the essence for me. What I would there's a kind of a new phrase, and that has just come, and out of my work with the Therapist Circle, as we're preparing something. We were working with Jean's chapter on It Fills Itself In. And anyway, in the doing of that work, and then also thinking about Mia Legerson's, some of her writings and such. Anyway, what's happened for me is it's made me, what is central for me is captured in this phrase now. It's a process. What focusing oriented therapy does for me and for my clients when we get to that place is helping people to catch their wave of life forward movement. And just like surfers who are working to catch their wave, it can be a lot of hard work to not be drowned in the wave, or to find it and to balance and that kind of thing. So that's a new kind of metaphor for me. And what I think is that the carrying forward and life forward movement and life force, those kinds of aspects. For me, that's what I find most precious and most unique about the focusing orientation, through finding the felt sense and the life forward that's within that, and the shift. And all kinds of other models, at least, don't do that, don't work with that beyond words as quite as explicitly, or I don't think.
Yes. And what you're saying there is so important to me, that it's through developing an awareness of the felt sense, and especially the therapist having it, right? Awareness, something is happening here. There's something there that's about to emerge. And that felt sense is just organically connected to this forward movement, to this wave, to this thrust of development. And FOT sort of helps you to be aware of it and to catch it.
Yes. And when you use that term, this thrust of development, that really resonated for me, because it's like there's the thrust of the movement, but then you're adding this other kind of word to it, of it's a certain kind of movement, that we could use the word development with. And and so then that's where sort of principles of values and ethical development or character development can also join with that somehow. And so an example might be, I could say something like, so somebody has this sense of right direction and they're moving in that, and I might say something to the effect of, is there a particular word that would capture that, or is there a value from your tradition, or something that you learned that might fit with this movement, so then the value can become like a, something to hold on to, or to carry it further forward, or something like that.
So the value terms for you become handles. They're possible handles.
Yes.
And capturing the forward movement in the felt sense of what it's going toward, what it's
want. And handles that capture, and perhaps, back to your word, can develop it in some kind of way, or shape it in some kind of way.
Open it up.
Open it up. Okay.
We're going to need to have a whole conversation about this, because it's so important, and you've done so much work on looking at Jen Lynn's paper on values and what we mean by values, and this whole idea that there's an organic human life force that has its own sense of values growing and developing as part of the human experience, not imposed from above, which is often associated with values like I should be more this, and I have to be that, and I'm doing something wrong, or I'm fucking up, or something like that.
that merging of that superimposition can get merged with an inner critic.
Yeah. And we often have to separate that and say,
Mm-hmm.
That's coming down on you here.
Mm-hmm.
But let's see
Mm-hmm.
what it wants. And it's an amazing kind of faith that focusing gives us, or I don't know if it gives it to us, but it articulates the faith that what is organically in us is valuing, is going in a direction of more humanness or something.
Mm-hmm. More humanness, more humaneness, more, broader, broader connection,
Yes.
caring, all of that.
Yes, what we used to call consciousness raising,
Yeah.
And that's inherent in us when it isn't stopped.
Yes. And when it isn't stopped, and Gene has a wonderful way of, concept that he talked about around, he used the term stoppage, and the work is, to find our way to the place, help work together to find our way to the place of stoppage. And
right.
Through the way in which we work with the place of stoppage and the intricacies around it and the facets, to use his term, then the stoppage starts to loosen up.
Yes.
And what travels through the stoppage is that life forward.
Yes.
And it does help that all of us who are focusing oriented therapists practice focusing, whether alone or in partnership or both. Because how is that trust going to develop if it's the trust that we have in our particular therapeutic circumstance? Yeah.
Yes.
But it's going to come further with if we've lived it.
Yes, that's so important, that it isn't only theoretically that we trust a sense of inherent forward movement, but it's through practice, through experience, that we develop that trust.
I'll never forget, in my early days of doing focusing and came into my work. So somewhere around, let's just say I started in 2000, so somewhere between 2000 and 2005 or something like that. Right? I'm on this panel. I was working in an employee assistance therapy program, a counseling program for the hospital that I worked with. I'm on this panel, and one of the moderators was a Catholic hospital, and one of the moderators said something to the effect of, do you give hope to your clients? And I remember saying something to the effect, and it came from that experience with clients and with myself and all of that. I said, I don't give them hope, but hope does emerge in some kind of way, and it's a different kind of thing.
Yes,
we get to be surprised by.
Yes,
by hope.
By the hope that we can be talking about the most devastating circumstances and life experience, and then we're surprised by this hope sort of just arising. Even the hope is even in when we're talking about the worst of it and finding the right metaphor for the worst of it. Some kind of life force comes in there.
Yeah, I believe that to be the case very strongly, very
Well,
strongly.
I would love to go on talking about that and share experiences I've had of that and hear yours. But I think we should get to the bees because people want this pith.
All right. I'll offer some pith. Yeah, I like to I like to do little, play around with, organize things in some kind of way. And one of the ways that I organize things is with acronyms, and one of the more recent one was something like bees that came up, and so was as a way of kind of looking at what happens, or the essence of what happens in focusing oriented therapy. When we have that as sort of as a mindset. And so I would start with there clearly, if we're working in therapy, certainly the starting off point is some form of suffering that brings people to come to work with us. So I started thinking about different kinds of suffering that a person can come with, that you could kind of use the letter B with in some kind of way. And so it may perhaps a sense of brokenness or burdened or bereft, or so those are some examples, and I'm sure there are lots of other B's, but people come with that in some kind of way. And our job is I start using the B to be thinking about our job is to be, and I'll use Jean's kind of concept of be the interaction in some kind of way that the client will need to be able to go closer to or become aware of in more intricately their particular painful B. So we're there with them in those various kinds of ways that we know to be the interaction, and we're there safely. You want to pick up on that, Lynn?
I wanted to reflect that we start with some kind of burden or brokenness, or maybe even just begging for newness or something.
Oh, okay, yeah. I like that, and that captures, and that begging for newness often comes. It's underneath the other B's that we come to a therapist for.
Yes.
And that's that kind of life forward longing to use L's, but it's begging for something. Did you say begging for something more or something better or something?
Notice I said, but of course, the begging, I guess, is the word there. That might coming with something, and then your B's are what our job is as therapists. And the first one is being the interaction that is going to help the client to get closer to what's there for them, right? To get to make a place for it, and I forget exactly how you put it, but can you just say one more word?
Well, to be safe enough.
Yes,
to be safe enough to be able to be with, in however close a way, what is burdening them. And that can, depending on the person and depending on our how we click therapeutically, that can take time. That's the relational home dimension.
Absolutely. The relational home dimension, which is a term I love from Stollerow. I just want to underline that phrase of being the interaction, which is Genlin's phrase that he talks about as not just interacting in a particular way, but being our way of being the interaction that's going to help the person to get closer to what they need to be processing.
I'm with you on that for sure. And to come up with another B, they're sort of it's beyond technique.
Yes, beyond technique. Great.
And so then it's kind of like what are the processes that allow us to move beyond technique. It doesn't mean that we don't have technique, but we move beyond it, and that's our own ongoing work, I think.
Yes.
So
okay.
Yeah,
we have to
okay.
along with all these B's, because
Okay.
it would be, an hour dialogue.
Okay. So should I go a little bit more with that? So then, I mean, one of the kinds of one of the kinds of ways that we can be that interaction is to, we then become receptive to whatever is happening there in the moment with the person. And one of the things that I think is also terribly important to be receptive to is people's tearing up, or eyes moistening in some kind of way. I was very influenced by Kathy McGuire's kind of writings that she did on tears, and Jean did some on tears as well, and so that kind of making that the room for that, because however kinds of ways that are not too threatening for people, or safe harbor kinds of ways to at least acknowledge that in some way, because those tears are really they're doorways to being seen and heard and accepted, and then going further inside to what brings them, kind of thing. So that's part of the being, how we are being with the person, and of course the listening to what's below the words and the longings that are below the words. So that's our ways.
Below the
below, yeah, that's another B. Yeah, below the words, and that's so much the implicit kind of the Jean's second hello, is being there with that and attentive to the second hello, from the hello.
Right, we may need to fill people in on that.
Yeah.
Jean,
yeah. Excuse me for 1 minute.
I'm heading out for a bit. I'll be back very soon. Lindsay said yes to Milo. So,
okay, great.
We'll see you by. I said about 3:30 or something.
It's a deal.
Okay, see you
Have
later.
fun. Bye. Okay. Hello.
Jean had the habit, and everybody commented on this, that he would always say hello. And Steve has a whole framework about the first hello being the hello in ordinary life, the explicit, and the second hello being hello to the underneath, to the implicit. Is that?
It's very, very much, yeah. Yeah. And it works for so many things. You could say you can say hello to these, to some glasses, and they, take a look at what's here. And the second hello is what's implicit in the story of these glasses.
Yes,
It's a wonder. Yeah, I don't know if he meant it that way, but I have a feeling that he did. So, so that's our way of being with, and that also helps the client to be able to begin to be with what's going on at a more and more embodied level. I'm thinking about the experiential levels from that research that was done back in the mid-60s or something, if that's when it was done. And so then it's helping that person to be with what's below the words, what's below the situation, and that can be emotion, and or thoughts, and then emotion, and below that. So, and be able to be with in some kind of way. And that being with in some kind of way doesn't have to be up close and embracing. For different people, depending on how charged that is and their trauma experience, it can be with just even looking out the side of their eye in some way or another.
Be with doesn't have to be close.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So then it's being with, and then little by little in the way that we respond to people being with. And this is the focusing attitude, which is however that starts to come across, is be with curiosity, be with some attempt at empathy, be with some sort of acceptance or compassion. Everybody who's listening to this would probably know that. And but it's modeling that, and also helping the person to find it inside themselves, to be with that kind of thing.
And I want to add to that when we therapists can be with something, make a place for it, then it's in the system. So it's not just that we're modeling it, but that it's already there in the atmosphere. So if somebody's railing against something, and I am able to settle with it in my body, and body is a B word too, right?
Yeah.
Cheat and say embodied, but that is an E.
when we can practice bodying, to quote David Young. So yeah.
Right. And then it's in the us when the therapist can do it.
Yes. Yeah. And then what can come from that, from little bit by little bit of having that in the us, and it becomes in the atmosphere, then whatever is beneath the words or beneath the varying defenses, depending on your theoretical concepts that you use, then what's behind it can kind of look out from behind and be seen or heard. And as that starts to happen, something from beyond the pain, or can, and in maybe like the begging for something good to happen, or begging for something to unfold, can start to show itself little by little. Then there's start the beginnings of some new life.
Yes.
New life sprouting kind of thing. And there's a wonderful movie with Tom Hanks that I'll find the name of it, but anyhow, he was a guy who was lost on a he'd been lost on some island. He worked for some company, and it was in a plane crash, and he was on an island all by himself. And while he was on, he got saved. And when he got saved, he went back to see the woman he had just married, and to see her. And he'd been gone for years, and he came back and saw her, and she had thought he was dead, and she found somebody else, got married, started a family, and all of that kind of thing. And so he needed to see her, and said some peace needed to happen. Anyway, after he does it, he leaves that particular city, and he hitchhikes. He takes a train or something. Yeah, he takes some sort of train, and he leaves the city that he needed to come back to, and that he'd been thinking about before, and he leaves the city. And the movie ends with this kind of thing where he gets off, and he looks around, goes, there's this path, and there's this path, and there's this path. And it's kind of like, sort of, okay, well, that's been taken care of. Now what? And so I think that there is somewhere in the movement, in the focusing oriented therapy, as things have been with, and there's gone beneath and beyond, and there's some healing I don't have a B for that, and then, or unblocking, and then it's kind of like, okay, what do I want my life to become, or who do I want to become? So there's a becoming kind of thing in there.
Yes. Yeah.
And yeah, that I'll remember the name of the movie. But I always thought that was wonderful. It's like, okay, now what? Now I've.
Yes, and those cycles of the burden, the being with, they aren't so linear. It could be the becoming right away, with the beginning initial consultation when the person is describing the burden. There can be this little becoming and the being with, and they have this sequence, and the sequence on that level, on the second to low level of the implicit, is always different. And
yes. So as you're talking about it, it's just not linear. Do you see it as a kind of an upward spiral, or a deepening spiral, or maybe spiral isn't it doesn't have to be lodged in that kind of term.
Right. I mean, we think so linearly, right? Yeah. But then when we look back on a sequence with a client, we can say, oh, this happened then, and then this, and that brought that. And it doesn't go in the order that we imagine, and yet that order is really important for our way of sort of organizing ourselves. And I so appreciate that about your way of thinking, that it helps me to feel like everything is there in this lovely order, and I can think about it all.
And so maybe then that lovely order that we might, package in some kind of way or take with us, maybe that could be, in some way or another, that could be our first hello. That that we've got that, and then but if we can recognize that and not superimpose that first hello, and use it as a tool in some kind of way, or some sort of map not being the territory, to quote some other person, then we help people find their implicit order,
Yes, right.
their next right step, or
Right.
which implies some orderliness
Mhm.
for the person organically.
Yeah, that's a lovely way to close our conversation for today. That
Okay.
order map is maybe different than the territory of a tree fell here, the stream ran over, all of that, and both are important.
And both are important. Yeah.
Mm. I just want to say that we would really invite people to write comments on this video and add to it your own thoughts and tell us what this movie is. I'm sure someone will know.
Yeah, I'm sure someone will know. Yeah. And okay.
Thank you
So I
so
get thank you. This helps. Hope it'll be helpful. And also, but I think that it'll be an ongoing conversation for people. And then it just helps me clarify. And hopefully not to get too rigid in the upper hello.
Well, it's a delight to dialogue with you.
Okay.
Bye.
So